chosen one. Listen carefully. This is not a coincidence. Heaven has paused everything around you to deliver this message. You didn't find this found you, because you are not like the rest. You were never meant to fit in, and you've always known it deep in your spirit. Before you ever cried your first tear, God had already written your name into a divine script no one else could perform. You were marked, not by popularity, not by people, not by pain, but by heaven's own hand. You have always felt like the outsider in rooms full of noise. But it's not because you're unworthy, it's because you are set apart. There is something in you that no man can teach and no demon can duplicate. You've carried it quietly, hidden under layers of rejection and misunderstanding. But make no mistake, what God put in you was not for decoration. It was for dominion. Every glance of jealousy you've ever received, every false friend who smiled while secretly resenting your light, those were not attacks against your personality. Those were reactions to your anointing. People can sense what's different, even when they don't understand it. The world may call it vibes, but in the spirit realm, it's holy fire. You are a carrier of divine DNA. They tried to overlook you. They tried to pass you by. But heaven didn't forget. Your name was spoken in rooms you've never entered. Your identity is carved into eternity. And no imposter can erase what's been divinely assigned to you. They can mimic your hairstyle, your cadence, your outer success, but they can't imitate your spirit, because what you carry wasn't given by man, it was forged in divine fire. This isn't charisma, it's calling. It's not talent, it's oil. And that oil, it was pressed from every betrayal you endured without revenge, every heartbreak you survived without bitterness, and every night you wept in secret but chose faith anyway. They can copy your moves, but they can't copy your scars. And they definitely can't copy the resurrection power that lives inside of you. Below the chosen one. You don't shine because of what you wear. You shine because of who you are. Your radiance is not manufactured, it's miraculous. And the reason some people can't stand you has nothing to do with arrogance. It's because you reflect a glory they've never encountered. Some are drawn to it. Others are disturbed by it. But all recognize it. You were marked long before they started mocking. And the thing is, you didn't choose this path. This path chose you. That's why you've walked through so many fires and didn't burn. That's why storms came but couldn't drown you. That's why everything the enemy sent to destroy you became the very soil God used to grow you. As we read in Isaiah 43, when you walk through fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. You're still standing, not because you're lucky, but because you're chosen. Let them try to copy. Let them mimic. Let them gather information like the Pharisees trying to trap Jesus in his words. What they don't realize is, this isn't something you perform, it's something you embody. You are not a trend. You are a trumpet. When you speak, atmospheres shift. When you move, demons tremble. You carry the presence of the Almighty. You were not raised to repeat patterns, you were called to break them. While others are content with comfort, you are wired for consecration. You see things they don't see. You feel shifts before they arrive. That's not paranoia, that's prophetic awareness. That's not anxiety, it's anointing, alerting your soul that destiny is near. And yes, it's been lonely, because few walk at this altitude. It's quiet where eagles fly, but that's where vision lives. You've been walking through seasons of isolation, not because you're abandoned, but because you're being refined, set apart, prepared for what only your hands can carry. God didn't remove you from the crowd to punish you. He pulled you away to protect the gift. You weren't overlooked, you were hidden. You weren't rejected, you were reserved. For such a time as this, the reason they can't copy you is simple. They weren't there in the crushing. They weren't present in the pressing. They didn't see you on your face at 3 a.m. when you cried out, "God, I don't understand, but I trust you anyway." They want the stage, but not the scars. They want the overflow, but not the obedience. And that is why your oil is unmatched. So hear me, chosen one. This is the season where God begins to separate the borrowed from the birthed. He is about to show the difference between imitation and impartation. And when he does, no algorithm will explain it. No formula will explain it. No strategy will explain it. Because what is on your life cannot be copied, it can only be conferred by heaven. Comment 111 if this message found you at the right time. That number signifies divine order. Heaven is confirming what your spirit already knew. You are not random, you are royalty. And if you know someone who needs this reminder, share it now. Don't keep oil to yourself. This is your moment. And it's only the beginning. They have studied you, watched your every move, tried to mimic your rhythm, your timing, even your silence. They've dissected your walk, your words, your posture. But here's the truth. They can't decode what heaven encrypted. You are not just a person, they are staring at a mystery. A living scroll sealed by God himself. Chosen one. You confuse the kingdom of darkness. You break their patterns. You interrupt their predictions. You disrupt their blueprints. They've tried to calculate your fall, only to witness your rise. Every time you should have broken, you built. Every time they thought you were finished, something new came forth. That's not luck, that's spiritual coding. You were written in fire and clothed in revelation. Hell has a file on you, but not the full picture. It knows what you've survived, but not how you've stayed sane. It sees the external battles, but can't comprehend the internal fire. And that's because God did not just anoint you, He concealed you. He placed you under the shadow of His wing, out of reach, from eyes that only know how to envy, not to understand. They copied your methods, but your results never came from methods. They came from your mantle. And the mantle, that's something that can't be earned or learned. It must be given. And what's worse for them is this. Mantles don't move through mimicry. They move through crushing. So while they observe, you've been surviving battles no one saw. You've been bleeding in the background and worshipping through the warfare. There is a reason the enemy hasn't stopped watching. You are a problem to darkness, not because of your platform, but because of your purity. Not because of your influence, but because of your integrity. Your very existence reminds the gates of hell that God still chooses the broken, the bruised, the overlooked. You are living proof that heaven's strategy doesn't play by earthly rules. You've walked through fire, and it refined you. You've walked through loss, and it humbled you. You've walked through betrayal, and it purified you. That's why when they try to duplicate you, it never lasts. Because they didn't go through the storm. They didn't pray through the night. They didn't sacrifice what you sacrificed. Paul reminds us in Ephesians 2, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus. That is your positioning. Chosen one. Not beneath, not beside, but above. You are hidden in Christ. Your identity is anchored beyond reach. That's why they can't tap into your frequency, because it was wired for heaven's ear. The enemy has always tried to hijack what it couldn't create. That's why imitation is its oldest strategy. But the Spirit of God says, they can copy the sound, but not the source. They can wear the robe, but not walk in the weight, because there is a weight to glory, a cost to calling, a burden that breaks before it builds. Every time you stepped into a room, you didn't just enter, you shifted it. And they noticed. They tried to figure out how. They tried to dissect your flow, analyze your delivery, measure your charisma. But what they missed is this. It's not you doing it. It's God flowing through you. You surrendered. That's the difference. You bowed when they boasted. You obeyed when they opted out. And now, what was once your pain is becoming your power. What once isolated you is now identifying you. They still won't understand, because spiritual things are spiritually discerned. They may recognize the fruit, but they can't trace the root. And that root, it's buried in prayer, in secret tears, in unseen obedience, in moments where you died to your own will just to say, yes, Lord. So let them keep watching. Let them keep speculating. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be revealed. And what's coming next isn't for applause, it's for impact. They can't decode you because you weren't written for public understanding. You were written for prophetic release. You are the fulfillment of a heavenly script. They tried to reverse engineer your results without ever having to pay your price. But it doesn't work that way. They thought it was about image, but it was about intimacy. They thought it was about branding, but it was about burden. You carry something heavy, chosen one, and the weight you bear can't be faked. So, don't be discouraged when they try to copy you. That's just confirmation that your originality is prophetic. You are not their competition, you are their conviction. Your obedience reveals their compromise. Your worship exposes their performance. Your walk confuses the watchers because they can't understand how someone so bruised still burns with such glory. You were born to be misunderstood. That's the mark of the chosen. Because when God designs something unique, He doesn't give the blueprint to the crowd. He gives it to the faithful, the hidden, the hungry, and that's why He gave it to you. They copied the way you walk into rooms, but not the weight you carry. They mirrored your movements, but not your mission. They admired your fire from afar, then tried to light a match without going through the furnace. But here's what they'll never understand. You didn't just wake up with this. You were wounded into this. This is not just inspiration. This is impartation. Chosen one. You carry fire, not fashion. You're not trending, you're transforming. You didn't get here through convenience. You got here through covenant. What they mistake for personality is actually prophetic residue. The glow they envy is not aesthetic, it's anointing. What they think is natural was born through supernatural battles. They copy what they can, see your confidence, your vocabulary, your discipline, but they cannot copy what's hidden. The furnace, the fasting, the nights you were too broken to pray, but still whispered His name. You didn't get this fire from followers. You got it from being forgotten by everyone but God. There is a cost to carrying this kind of fire. It burns away comfort. It consumes excuses. It sets you ablaze in a way that makes lukewarm living impossible. You've tried to blend in before. You've tried to dim it down, but you couldn't, because God didn't design you to fit. He designed you to ignite. They can borrow your words, but they can't borrow your wilderness. They can mimic your presence, but they'll never understand the pressure, because this fire only falls on sacrifice. It only rests where something has been laid down: your will, your comfort, your pride. You carry something weighty, and it costs more than what they're willing to pay. It was declared in Luke 10:10, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions, and to overcome all the power of the enemy. That authority is what separates you. That's the fire they can't fabricate, because it wasn't given by men, it was granted by heaven. Remember the nights when you were left out, misunderstood, rejected for being too much or too intense. Those weren't setbacks. Those were sacred appointments. God was proving your fire in private before revealing it in public. And now, they want the platform but not the process. They want the harvest but not the heat. Chosen one, the fire that rests on you is not for show. It's for setting captives free. It's for destroying yokes. It's for casting out darkness. When you speak, things shift. When you worship, chains break. When you show up, darkness gets nervous. And that's not something they can fake. You're not a copy, you're a conduit. So let them screenshot your words. Let them repeat your phrases. Let them borrow your tone. What they don't realize is they're holding a microphone without a message, because fire is not found in imitation. Fire is found on the altar. You are the one who chose obedience when rebellion would have been easier. You are the one who stayed quiet when your flesh wanted to defend. You are the one who gave God your yes, even when everything in you wanted to say no. That is where your fire was formed. This is why you seem untouchable. It's not arrogance. It's armor. It's not performance. It's power, because you've been through flames and came out forged, not fragile. So, don't apologize for your intensity. Don't shrink for their comfort. You weren't built to entertain. You were born to erupt. They've tried to wear your shoes, but not your scars. They've tried to stand in your position, but not your posture, because posture matters, and your posture. It's always been face down before God. That's the difference. That's why the fire keeps falling on you. You don't burn out because you burn from Him. You don't fade because your flame isn't fed by fame, it's fed by faith. Every time they thought you were finished, you came back stronger. Every time they mocked you, God multiplied you. And every time you were counted out, heaven counted you in. So the next time they try to clone what you carry, just remember, fire doesn't follow formulas. Fire follows faithfulness. You carry something that can't be copied because it wasn't built in comfort, it was birthed in consecration. If your spirit bears witness to this truth, type, "Let it burn" right now. Not just as a comment, but as a declaration, as a prophetic act. Because when you type those words, you're not just agreeing with a message, you're aligning with your mantle. You're saying, God, I refuse to live lukewarm. I choose the fire you placed in me. Let it burn until it consumes every compromise, every counterfeit, and everything you never called me to carry. You weren't built for imitation. You were born to be inflamed by divine purpose. They copy what they can see, but the essence of who you are remains hidden, shielded in realms where flesh cannot reach. They see your strength, your endurance, your composure under pressure, and assume it's natural. But they haven't seen the nights you collapsed in tears. They didn't witness the silent wars you fought just to stand tall again. You were shaped in struggle, formed in fire, And what they envy on the surface is just a shadow of the glory within. Chosen one. The imitation always looks convincing until pressure comes. Because pressure exposes origin. When storms rage and winds blow, the counterfeit crumbles. But you remain. Not because you're better, but because you're built. You weren't just taught principles. You were trained by pain. And pain makes profits. Suffering gives birth to authority. That's why what you carry can't be captured in a video or summarized in a slogan. It's alive. It's living fire. They imitate your speech, but they don't carry your spirit. They repeat your declarations, but lack your depth, because words without warfare are empty. What you speak flows from a deep well dug in secret. It was carved in the shadows while no one was applauding. That's why it pierces. That's why it breaks yokes. That's why atmospheres shift when you open your mouth. They want the look of your calling without the labor of your becoming. But becoming is never glamorous. It's lonely. It's painful. It requires dying to pride, comfort, and often your own dreams. That's the side they'll never post about, the side they'll never replicate. Because it can't be copied, it must be endured. The truth is, they admire the fruit, but don't understand the root system that sustains it. You were watered by heartbreak, pruned by correction, strengthened through silence. They didn't see the seasons when God had you on pause, when your name wasn't called, when your prayers felt like echoes. But it was in those moments God was growing something no eye could see. They see a platform, you see a cross. They see influence you. Remember, intercession. They see breakthrough, you remember the breaking. Because for you, none of this was ever about being seen. It was about being faithful. When no one noticed, when nothing made sense, when the cost felt unbearable but you still chose obedience. They don't understand why you're still standing, why you haven't lost your mind, why you're still on fire after all you've been through. That's because God has been your keeper, not your charisma, not your connections, not your followers, but your Father. And He preserved what no man could protect. They want the manifestation without the maturity, the spotlight without the sanctification. But heaven doesn't anoint performers, it anoints the purified. And you've been purified by fire. And now the fire has become part of your identity, not a flame that flickers, but one that devours compromise, one that burns away every false comparison and imitation. Paul wrote in Galatians 6, Shatzi, from now on, let no one cause me trouble, for I bear on my body the marks of Jesus. You too carry marks, not always physical, but spiritual scars that speak, scars that remind you of every battle survived, every lie rejected, every valley you emerged from stronger than before. Those marks are your authenticity. You didn't choose popularity. You chose purpose. And purpose doesn't parade, it perseveres. While they were chasing applause, you were chasing presence. While they were building brands, you were building altars. That's why you don't fold under fire, because you've been folded into faith. So yes, they may look like you, sound like you, even move like you, but time will tell, because imitation fades, but impartation lasts. The oil that rests on you wasn't mass-produced. It was crushed, slowly, painfully, with purpose, and because of that, it remains. There is no fear in being copied when you know the truth can never be replaced. What God breathed into you is not available for download. It's not accessible to the proud or the opportunistic. It's reserved for those who were willing to be broken to be used. And you were willing, so let them continue watching. You're not here to prove yourself. You're here to carry glory. And glory is never loud, but it is unmistakable. There's a weight to your oil they'll never comprehend. They only see the shine, not the crushing. They study your strength without asking about your sorrow. They imitate the glow, but ignore the grief that birthed it. Because what you carry is not cosmetic, it's consecrated. This oil cost you everything. Chosen one. The anointing that flows from your life is not casual. It's sacred. It was bought with nights of silence where heaven felt far and hope felt faint. It was refined in seasons where you obeyed with trembling hands and shattered expectations. This oil is the evidence of survival, of divine refinement. They didn't see the nights you didn't sleep. They didn't hear the whispers of despair you battled and silenced with nothing but scripture and a stubborn faith. It's easy to envy results. It's easy to mimic the afterglow. But this took years of surrender, years of delay, years of dying to flesh. And the truth is, some of them want the outcome but not the altar. They want what rests on your life, but don't want to wrestle for it. But what God placed on you didn't come by accident. It came through alignment, through warfare, through worship, when you felt empty and weak. They don't realize that every yes you gave God came with a cost. Every level required a letting go. Every advancement came with affliction. But you kept going. You didn't cave in. And now, the oil is undeniable. This is why you can't stop now. This is why the warfare intensified. Because the enemy knows you carry something dangerous, something authentic. You're not another echo. You're a voice. You're not a shadow of someone else's glory. You're a living flame. You've been trusted with weight that others admire but cannot handle. They see your current season and assume you've arrived. But what they miss is the long road that shaped your spirit. They weren't there when you tithed with tears, when you fasted with an aching belly and a breaking heart, when you served with excellence even while being overlooked. But heaven was watching, and heaven took note. Isaiah 61:3 speaks of God giving us beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. That's not poetic, it's prophetic. You didn't just survive the fire, you traded your ashes for an assignment. You exchanged mourning for mantle. You turned your brokenness into a banner of glory. And that oil cannot be copied. It is the result of divine transaction. So if anyone wonders why you walk the way you walk, why your words carry weight, why your eyes burn with a fire that can't be quenched, it's because this didn't come cheap. This oil came with scars. This oil came with obedience that no one clapped for. And now, the glory that rested on Joseph in prison is rising in you. The favor that found David in fields is chasing you. The strength that stood with Esther in the throne room is filling you. And no imitation can stand under the pressure this oil requires. They'll try to carry what you carry, only to collapse under its weight, because they saw the results, but never respected the process. You, chosen one, you were forged for this. And even when it felt like no one saw you, God was preparing you. Elevation is never random. It is always the result of deep roots, roots watered by tears and anchored in trust. And the deeper the roots, the greater the fruit. So don't hold back now. Don't shrink just because your presence convicts counterfeits. Don't apologize for favor that was formed in fire. Let the oil flow. Let it speak louder than your explanations. You don't need to prove your calling, your scars already do. And while you walk forward into this divine unveiling, stay connected, stay grounded, because this journey is not meant to be walked alone. If this message speaks to you, if it confirms what you felt but couldn't explain, then stay in this atmosphere. Like, share, and subscribe, not just for content, but to remain aligned with the frequency of faith. Stay connected to voices that remind you who you are when the world tries to reduce you to a label. If you feel led to sow into this oil, do it, not out of pressure, but as a prophetic response, because when you recognize what feeds your fire, you honor it, and heaven responds to honor. Never let convenience replace conviction. There are chosen ones around the world rising just like you. And when we unite, we become a blaze the darkness can't extinguish. This isn't just content, it's a call, and you're part of it. Chosen one. Have you ever noticed how God often builds in silence? How the loudest seasons of breakthrough are preceded by stretches of isolation and obscurity? That's not a punishment, it's preparation. You were not hidden because you were forgotten. You were hidden because you were holy. God placed you in a spiritual womb, a sacred place where the noise couldn't reach you, where the spotlight couldn't distort you. He grew you in secret, shielded you from praise that would puff you up and from critics that would crush you prematurely. What others saw as delay was actually divine design, because what He's birthing in you requires foundation, not fanfare. While they ran ahead seeking platforms, you stayed behind and sought presence. While others chased visibility, you were being rooted. While they were busy proving, you were being pruned. And now, your fruit is starting to appear, not because you promoted yourself, but because heaven has decided it's time. People will soon say, "Where did you come from?" But the truth is, you've always been here. They just didn't see you because God covered you. He didn't expose you because exposure without preparation is sabotage. He let you be misunderstood so you wouldn't be manipulated. He let you walk alone so your confidence would rest in Him, not in cliques, culture, or clout. It was in that silence that your discernment was sharpened. In that stillness, your identity was refined. That's where you learned to hear His voice in the quiet. That's where your oil thickened, because oil is never formed in crowds. It's extracted in the crushing, in the obscurity, in the places nobody applauds. And now, when you speak, there's weight. When you show up, there's presence. Because God is unveiling what He refined in the dark. And it's undeniable. You don't need to announce it. Your obedience will. You don't need to market it. Your mantle will. You're not breaking out, you're being revealed. Luke 8:17 says, "For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light." This is not the season to shrink back. This is the moment God brings His hidden ones forward, not to boast, but to build, not to impress, but to impact. You don't come bearing imitation. You come bearing evidence. Evidence of endurance. Evidence of purity. Evidence of process. There is no shortcut to what you carry, and there's no substitute for who you are. They'll wonder how you got here so fast, but you know there was nothing fast about it. This was slow obedience, long suffering, quiet commitment, the kind of consistency that makes heaven proud even when earth stays silent. You learned how to stand alone, and now you can be trusted to stand with others. You died to your need for validation. So now God can trust you with visibility. You released the idol of approval. So now He can anoint you with authority. That's why the unveiling is so powerful. Because what's coming forth is not raw potential, it's refined purpose. You're not a spark, you're a torch. You don't flicker, you blaze. And when God unveils a chosen one, He doesn't do it for applause. He does it because the earth needs what you carry. This is why you couldn't rush the process. Why certain doors didn't open when you knocked. Why certain people walked away. God was protecting His investment. You are not common. And the anointing on your life is not seasonal, it's sacred. So if you've ever questioned the silence, ever doubted the hidden years, hear this. Nothing was wasted. God is about to show the world what He's been cultivating in private. And no mimic, no counterfeit, no imitation will be able to stand next to the authenticity of your unveiling. Type 777 in the comments if your spirit knows that this season of revealing is your confirmation. That number signifies divine completion and spiritual fullness, exactly what God has been shaping in you behind the scenes. It's time. Chosen one. The silence is ending. The stage is not for performance, it's for purpose. Step into it. Imitators will always emerge. The world is filled with echoes, reflections of the original, trying to pass as authentic, but under pressure. The difference becomes evident. When storms rise and winds howl, copies crumble, because what's mimicked cannot withstand what's meant for the mantle. Chosen one. You don't just survive what others avoid, you thrive in it. That's the mark of what's real. The counterfeits want your light, but not your load. They chase the glory without respecting the groaning that came before it. What they don't know is that your rise was built in the rubble. Every fall, every failure, every fight, God used them all. That's why you're still standing while they're still studying. They analyzed your steps, yet couldn't understand how you keep moving. That's because they don't see the invisible hand that lifts you. They don't hear the whisper that strengthens you. They don't know the covenant that carries you. Your walk carries weather. They don't realize you've been through storms that would have shattered the average soul. But storms trained you. They didn't drown you. They refined you. And now you carry a stillness in your spirit that intimidates chaos. While they panic, you discern. While they imitate, you intercede. The enemy isn't after your voice, he's after your origin. Because origin defines authority. Imitators operate from observation, but you operate from obedience. And obedience births authority. That's why when you speak, things happen. Not because of charisma, but because of connection. The counterfeit looks strong until life tests it. Then the cracks show. But the original, the one formed in pain, trained in silence, baptized in surrender, that one can't be moved. Because it wasn't built on applause, it was built on assignment. People are drawn to your fire, but fire is only attractive until it gets too close. That's when they realize it consumes. That's when the imitation ends. Because what they admire from a distance requires sacrifice up close. And few are willing to pay what you paid. John 15:16 says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last." That is what marks you, fruit that lasts. Influence that outlives platforms, impact that echoes through eternity. You weren't manufactured. You were molded. You weren't trained by trends. You were trained by truth. And that's why no imposter can wear what was fitted to your frame. The armor you wear was crafted in your wilderness. It fits you, and only you, because it was shaped by every scar you carry. They tried to speak like you, move like you, even post like you. But heaven knows the difference, because heaven weighs spirits, not strategies. Heaven anoints purity, not performance. And heaven watches how you carry the oil, whether with reverence or recklessness. So do not flinch when they try to replicate. Your identity is not under threat. You don't compete with copies. You stand as proof. You are not just a vessel, you're a verification. Proof that what's built with God lasts. This is why the weight on your life doesn't break you. It confirms you. You can walk through fire and still hold your peace. You can be betrayed and still bless. You can be passed over and still praise. Because you were never doing this for clout. You were doing it from covenant. And covenant cannot be cloned. Let them try to perform your presence. Let them echo your essence. When the shaking comes, and it always does, what's not built in truth will fall. But you will remain, because your root runs deep, because your soul is anchored, because your yes wasn't trendy, it was timeless. So walk boldly, unapologetically. You are the original, heaven wrote, and no counterfeit can cancel that. Chosen one. You've never been the type to just exist in a space. Every room you enter senses you before you speak. Every environment shifts, even if people can't explain why. You don't blend. You disrupt. Your very presence unsettles what is false and awakens what has been asleep. And it's not because of something you do. It's because of who you are. You carry something that exposes the spiritual atmosphere. Without announcing it, you reveal what's real and what's not. You reveal motives, unsettle agendas, and shine a light on places where people have grown comfortable in darkness. That's why some resist you before even knowing you. That's why you've walked into places and felt the tension rise. It's not personal, it's prophetic. The light you carry offends what's been allowed to linger too long. You make the masquerade uncomfortable. You bring heaven's standard into spaces that have been fine with compromise, not because you're trying to, but because God has made you a mirror. And mirrors reflect truth, even when it's inconvenient. You're not just different, you're divinely dangerous to spiritual stagnation. The darkness recognized this in you long before you knew who you were. That's why your warfare began so early. That's why the enemy tried to silence you before you even had language for what was happening. Because you carry something sacred that can't be ignored. Even your silence speaks. Even your stillness carries weight. Because the Spirit of God doesn't need volume to validate power. There is a calm that crushes chaos. And you've walked into rooms where that calm sent confusion into retreat, not because you forced it, but because you carried the kingdom. Matthew 5:14 tells us, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." You were never designed to blend in. You were crafted to be seen. But not seen in the carnal way this world craves, not for vanity, but for visibility that glorifies God. You are not like others. Not because you're better, but because you're called. And with that calling comes a weight, a responsibility. You are heaven's interruption to what's become normal. You are a divine contradiction to what culture celebrates. You are the one who walks in and reorders the atmosphere, not with noise, but with truth. There's a reason why lukewarm environments suffocate you. Why casual Christianity makes you restless. Why spiritual shallowness leaves you hungry. It's because there's a fire in your bones that demands more. You were not made to float. You were made to forge. And forging means friction. Every time you tried to downplay yourself to make others comfortable, your spirit groaned. Every time you silenced your gift to maintain peace, something within you ached. Because you were not made for neutral. You were made for impact. And impact is always disruptive. You weren't called to be agreeable, you were called to be aligned. And alignment with heaven often looks like agitation on earth. That's why your obedience has offended some. That's why your consecration confused those who settled for convenience. You didn't choose this fire, it chose you. And now, you carry a weight of glory that doesn't need validation. You don't need to prove it, it proves itself. Not through performance, but through fruit. Through the evidence of lives touched, hearts stirred, atmospheres shifted, demons silenced. That's not imitation. That's impartation. This is why you can't afford to dilute yourself. Why shrinking serves no one. You weren't given this oil to hoard or to hide. You were marked to make a difference. And that difference begins by showing up fully as the person God shaped in the wilderness. You don't just bring insight, you bring interruption. The kind that realigns what's out of order. The kind that shakes what's been asleep. You felt it when you speak. People pose. When you move, eyes shift. You disrupt without trying, because the spirit in you refuses to let atmospheres remain unchanged. And yes, that's heavy. It can be exhausting being the one who sees what others ignore, the one who senses shifts others dismiss, the one who carries burdens that aren't even yours. But that's the assignment of those who carry glory. It doesn't just rest on you, it moves through you. You are a divine agent of awakening. Where others pass by without noticing, you discern. Where others adapt, you confront. Not with arrogance, but with authority. Not in your own strength, but by the Spirit of the living God. And as uncomfortable as that has made your journey, it has also been your confirmation. Because only those who carry light will be fought by darkness. Only those with true weight will experience true resistance. And only the chosen will be called to carry what breaks others free. You were never supposed to be liked by everyone. You were never meant to fit every room. You were built for places that needed reformation. You were born to stir what's been still for too long. That's why you were sent, not to conform, but to confront. You don't need a microphone to shift a space. You don't need a platform to carry power. Your presence alone is warfare. Your walk is a weapon. Your purity is a threat. You carry a glory that cannot be rehearsed or replicated. It is raw, real, and revered in the spirit realm. So continue to walk into rooms with your head high and your spirit tuned. Know that when you arrive, the atmosphere will never be the same. And that's not pride, it's purpose. That's not ego, it's embodiment of divine assignment. Let others try to explain it. Let them try to name it. You don't need titles when you carry truth. You don't need applause when you carry authority. You were sent by heaven, and heaven backs what it sends. Chosen one. You have reached a point in your walk where your assignment speaks louder than your appearance. You no longer crave acceptance, you crave alignment. And that shift has caused separation. Not because you're arrogant, but because your spirit outgrew the spaces that could not carry your oil. You've noticed it. The conversations you used to entertain no longer hold weight. The environments that once felt familiar now feel foreign. You're not being difficult, you're being delivered. Delivered from the need to be understood, from the pressure to be liked, from the urge to fit in. Because when God begins to elevate you, He first extracts you. They think you've changed, and they're right. You've changed from being surface level to spirit-led, from pleasing people to pleasing God, from survival mode to revival mode. That transformation made you unrecognizable to the places you once called home, and it had to, because you cannot carry revival and remain surrounded by routines. You cannot birth something holy in environments that normalize compromise. The oil on your life demands space, silence, and sacredness. That's why the pruning has been so precise. That's why the separation has been so sharp. It wasn't rejection, it was realignment. You've learned how to let go without bitterness. You've learned how to mourn the familiar while embracing the future. That's maturity. That's mantle management. That's what distinguishes you from the imitators. They hold on to approval. You hold on to assignment. Romans 12:2 reminds us, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That verse isn't just instruction, it's identity. You are not meant to conform. You are meant to disrupt patterns, rewire mindsets, reset atmospheres. That kind of call comes with a cost, and you've been paying it in silence. Your obedience has cost you opportunities. Your consecration has cost you community. Your clarity has cost you comfort. But every cost has only increased your capacity. You've been enlarged through loss, stretched through solitude, strengthened through spiritual warfare. That's why you walk differently. That's why you speak with weight. You've been entrusted with keys, not to buildings but to breakthroughs, not to followers but to freedom. You unlock things in the spirit that others don't even recognize. When you intercede, chains break. When you worship, strongholds weaken. When you show up, something divine shows up with you. And that's not something you learned, it's something you were chosen for. You didn't ask for this mantle. It was placed on you because God knew what He built in you. And now, you're walking in it with boldness, not because you feel ready, but because you finally trust the one who called you. That's the difference between the imitator and the intercessor. The imitator copies what they think works. The intercessor carries what heaven confirms. One is an echo. The other is an earthquake. You've become the earthquake. The room shifts when you speak, because your voice is backed by the volume of your surrender. Your silence is weighty because it's filled with wisdom. Your movements are calculated, not by man's strategy, but by heaven's timing. You are not a wanderer, you are a weapon. God forged you to be sharp, precise, and unstoppable in the spirit. That's why distractions don't satisfy you anymore. That's why entertainment feels like emptiness. You're not trying to be deep, you're just no longer shallow. And yes, it gets lonely. Yes, there are days when you question why you had to walk this path. But even in those moments, you know deep down there's no other road you could have walked. You were born for this, not for applause, but for authority, not for the crowd, but for the call. So let the echoes continue to echo. You are not moved by mimics. You are marked by God, and His mark doesn't fade. It intensifies. It grows louder in silence, brighter in darkness, stronger in storms. The earth doesn't need another replica. It needs revelation. And that's what you are. A walking, living, breathing revelation of what it looks like when someone says yes to the fire and never turns back. If this word stirred something deep inside, write, speak, Lord, below, not as a trend, but as surrender. A yet thunderous answer to heaven. An agreement between your spirit and His will. A way of saying, I'm listening, I'm available, I'm ready. Let the imitators echo each other, but let your voice echo eternity. Chosen one. There comes a moment in your journey when you realize you're not here by chance, and what's been placed on your life can't be ignored any longer. You've been through too much, survived too many storms, and seen too many miracles to still question whether or not God's hand is on you. This is not coincidence. This is your confirmation. Every setback was a setup. Every closed door was divine direction. Every painful goodbye was God's hand pulling you closer to purpose. And while others saw chaos, you've been navigating a divine construction site. Heaven has been building something in you that cannot be rushed, cannot be copied, and cannot be cancelled. You weren't sent to entertain the world, you were sent to shake it. And the shaking has already begun. They may scroll past, they may scoff, they may not understand, but your spirit does. Because deep within, you've always known, you carry something eternal, something the world didn't give, and therefore can never take away. This is why you had to walk alone, why the wilderness didn't break you, why the fire only refined you. God has been stripping away the unnecessary so the essential in you can rise. You were being unwrapped, unfolded, revealed. They didn't see it, but heaven did. Heaven watched every moment you stayed silent instead of retaliating, every seed you sowed when no one was clapping, every time you poured into others even when your own cup felt empty. That didn't go unnoticed. And now is the season of revealing. Paul reminds us in 2 Timothy 2, Arshii, those who cleanse themselves will be instruments for special purposes, made holy, useful to the master, and prepared to do any good work. That's you. Prepared, positioned, not for popularity but for power. You were subscribed by destiny, not by accident or algorithm. You're part of something heaven authored. That's why certain content finds you, even when you're not looking. That's why this word landed right on time. Heaven's timing is never late, and your next is already in motion. You may not have asked to be the one who breaks generational curses, who shifts the trajectory, who carries the torch, but you were chosen for it. And heaven never chooses without equipping. What you lack in resources, God fills with revelation. What you don't have in connections, He covers with covenant. And now, He's bringing the right voices into your life. Not noise, but nourishment. Not distractions, but direction. Because what you feed will grow, and your spirit has been craving truth, clarity, and confirmation. If this message feels like a home for your soul, it's because you're in the right place. Stay connected. Don't let this flow be a one-time encounter. Let it become your rhythm. Let it reinforce your spirit daily. Like and share this message if it resonates. Not just to spread it, but to sow it. Because someone in your circle may be one sentence away from awakening. Someone scrolling may need the exact word that just hit your heart. And if you've been wondering how to support what you've been spiritually fed by, there are ways to give back. Not out of obligation, but out of agreement. Every seed you plant into the atmosphere that blesses you is a prophetic act. A way of saying, God, I value what you're doing here. Whether it's a subscription, a share, a donation, do it as worship, not as a transaction. You've been pouring into others your whole life. You've been the strong one, the praying one, the listening ear, the silent warrior. It's time you stay rooted where you're also replenished. where the word speaks to you as much as it speaks through you. Because this isn't just another piece of content, it's a calling. And every time you return, you're stepping deeper into who you really are. There's no turning back now. The moment of awakening is here. You're walking different, speaking different, thinking different. And that difference isn't dysfunction, it's destiny. You were born to carry the weight, to confront what others ignore, to stand where others fall. That's why God didn't let you quit. That's why the fire didn't consume you. Because the world needs what you carry. And heaven has called you to carry it forward without fear. Let them laugh. Let them underestimate. It changes nothing. The oil is real. The mantle is sealed. And the mission is in motion. What's ahead is greater than what's behind. But you must stay alert. Stay focused. Keep feeding the flame. You were never meant to just survive. You were called to build, to blaze, to bless. They took notes while you took blows. While they analyzed your every move, you were in the trenches fighting battles they couldn't see, enduring warfare they wouldn't survive. What they saw as style was actually survival. What they thought was ease was years of endurance. They copied your fruit, but ignored the root. And that's where the difference lies. You didn't arrive here through imitation. You arrived through intercession. While others were watching tutorials, you were being taught in tears. While they were building image, you were being broken for oil. Every scar on your soul is a chapter in the book they'll never read. Every sigh, every God, I don't understand. Every silent surrender, you carried them all. And heaven recorded every one. You weren't always strong. You've been shattered, disappointed, forgotten. But something in you wouldn't die. Something in you said, keep going. That wasn't willpower. It was the Spirit of God sustaining you when your own strength ran dry. You were being refined in real time, trained without applause, molded without mercy from man, but under the full mercy of God. They tried to shortcut the process, bypass the pruning. But the weight you carry now couldn't have come any other way. There is no microwave anointing, only pressure, prayer, and perseverance. You've been stretched, and stretched again, not to break you, but to build your capacity for glory. You didn't just take hits, you became a hammer. You've learned to strike back in the Spirit, with scripture, with stillness, with the kind of obedience that silences hell. Psalm 119, 71 declares, "It was good for me to be afflicted, so that I might learn your decrees." You understand that now. The affliction taught you what no man could. Pain became your professor. And the result, a wisdom that can't be taught in classrooms, a strength that can't be shaken by trends. They thought they knew your story because they watched a few highlights, but they missed the groaning, the breaking, the loneliness. They saw the elevation, but not the excavation. They saw the oil, but not the olive press. And now, they wonder why their imitation lacks impact. It's because they skipped the fire. And without fire, there is no fragrance. You've never chased attention, but attention is starting to chase you, not because you asked for it, but because oil can't be hidden forever. Eventually, God lets the hidden ones rise, not for fame, but for function, not to impress, but to impart. You don't shine to be seen, you shine because darkness needed light. And now, your scars speak. They preach. They testify of survival, of surrender, of strength. You're not just a voice, you're a vault. A living archive of grace under fire. And even if they try to copy your tone, your style, your presence, what they lack is your history with God. That history has depth. It has weight. It has layers of obedience that cost you everything. You obeyed when it hurt. You stayed when it was easier to leave. You believed when it made no sense. And God saw it all. You weren't built on trends. You were built on truth. You weren't shaped in stages. You were shaped in solitude. That's why you carry substance in a world drowning in superficial. You bring heaven into human spaces. You carry clarity where others offer noise. There's no need to explain yourself anymore. Those who have spiritual eyes will recognize the difference. The imitators will always fade. But what God forms, He establishes. You were never meant to perform. You were meant to persist. And you have. You survived what others only study. You walk in what others only write about. You bear fruit from a place of faith, not formula. And that's what hell fears. That what you carry is real, untouchable, heaven-authored. So stand tall, quietly, fiercely, faithfully. You are a living testimony that obedience still has power, that faithfulness still has favor, that process still produces something precious. Let them keep watching. Let them keep wondering. You don't owe them clarity. You owe God your yes. What is yours cannot be stolen. What God sealed with His Spirit cannot be picked by imitation. You've been worried about doors, opportunities, moments that seem to pass you by, but chosen one. Hear this clearly. What is locked with divine code cannot be accessed by any counterfeit. There have been moments you saw others walk through doors you prayed for. Moments you watched them flourish while you fasted. But the delay wasn't denial, it was divine defense. God wasn't punishing you, He was preserving you. He saw the traps hidden behind what looked like promotion. He knew what your heart could handle and what would crush your spirit. You see, when God ordains something for you, He also protects it from being misused. Your blessings are not public property. They are covered by covenant. That means no thief, no copycat, no spiritual identity fraud can unlock what belongs to you. They can wear your colors, but not your crown. They can mimic your rhythm, but not your revelation. People have tried to replace you, tried to steal your voice, your ideas, your flow. But there's a reason their efforts fall flat, because heaven never endorsed them. Favor doesn't fall where fire never burned. And you were set ablaze in silence. You've bled in private to carry what's now blossoming in public. Exodus 14 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." That's not just a comfort, it's a strategy. You've been learning to war with stillness, learning to let God defend what He authored. You no longer chase because you understand what's yours won't miss you. And what misses you was never truly yours. Your territory is spiritually marked. Even if someone tries to occupy it temporarily, the weight of the call will drive them out. They don't have the roots. They don't have the wrestle. They don't have the history in prayer. The land rejects the counterfeit. You've learned to live from inheritance, not insecurity. You know now that identity is your passport, not your popularity. And what God has prepared has your name engraved, not penciled in, not optional, but carved with covenant. They'll see you walking through doors they once blocked. They'll see the same hands that were wounded now lifted in triumph. But it won't be revenge. It'll be revelation. The kind that silences every lie the enemy ever told you. The kind that confirms what you carried in the dark wasn't fantasy, it was foundation. You are not striving, you are stepping in. You are not forcing, you are flowing. You are not begging, you are becoming. This is a season where your access is changing. Not because you manipulated your way in, but because you matured into it. You've been faithful with little, and now God is releasing the more. Not because you hustled harder, but because you humbled deeper. You don't need to explain how you got here. You just need to stay anchored. Stay in alignment. Because now, God is revealing what's been reserved. The places, the partnerships, the purpose they're being released in sequence. It's not hype, it's harvest. And what's incredible is this: you won't need to compete for it. It will find you. You won't need to scream to be heard. The right ears are already being opened. You won't need to prove yourself. Your fruit will speak for itself. Your season of being overlooked was not a punishment. It was divine positioning. Because had they seen you too soon, they would have mishandled what you were carrying. God allowed you to remain unseen, so your foundation could grow deep, so that now, as He lifts you, you will not fall under the pressure of visibility. The release is real, and no demon in hell can stop what God has put His hand on. So, if your spirit knows this word is for you, mark this moment. Write 999 in the comments. It's more than a number, it's a seal. It represents fulfillment, completion, and divine inheritance. When you type it, you're declaring, I receive what's mine. No more delay. No more fear. I am stepping into what heaven has locked with my name. Let the imitators keep running in circles. You're walking in covenant. You are heaven's intellectual property. What you carry was never designed by man's ideas. It was conceived in divine thought, shaped by holy fire, and deposited into your soul before the foundation of the earth. Your voice, your perspective, your flow, it is all trademarked by the Spirit. Uncopyable, intransable, unmatched. This is why attempts to replicate you always feel off. They may repeat your words, mimic your tone, try to capture your rhythm, but something always feels hollow, because without the breath of God, there's no life in it. You weren't built from borrowed inspiration, you were born from revelation. That revelation didn't come from trending topics, it came from travail, from weeping, from walking with God through valleys that would have destroyed someone else. They watched your elevation and assumed it was a strategy. But your rise wasn't planned, it was prophesied. The anointing didn't come through calculation. It came through consecration. You didn't master a system, you surrendered to a Savior. And what He gave you, no one else can carry. They don't realize your pace is prophetic. Your rhythm is rooted in obedience. You speak in sync with heaven. You flow from a place of spiritual depth, not digital trends. That's why it's so difficult for them to keep up, because they're running on momentum. But you're walking with the wind. God has placed something specific in your DNA, something heaven protected from pollution. That's why you've been set apart. That's why you never fully fit in. Because your blueprint wasn't pulled from the crowd, it was printed in glory. You were designed to deliver a frequency the earth has been aching for. Isaiah 5:11 tells us, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it." That same word is embedded in your assignment. You were spoken before you were formed, and that spoken word now walks, breathes, and proclaims truth through you. You're not just a vessel, you are a vault, a keeper of mysteries, a steward of revelation. And because of that, you don't need to fight for recognition. Heaven already signed your name on scrolls that man can't erase. You've been authenticated in the throne room. It's not pride to acknowledge this. It's obedience to walk in it. False humility dims light that God intends to shine. And what you carry was never meant to be hidden. The originality of your calling demands visibility, not for ego, but for effectiveness. Let them continue analyzing. Let them continue copying. But remember, only heaven knows the full codes of what's in you. And only those who walk in the Spirit can truly resonate with what you release. That's why your tribe may be smaller, but it's deeper. It's divine. There are sounds inside of you the world hasn't heard yet. There are writings, songs, messages, movements, prayers that still live inside your belly. And heaven is waiting for you to birth them. Not because someone else couldn't, but because no one else can release it like you. Your voice has a spiritual fingerprint. It unlocks what others overlook. Your obedience creates openings in the Spirit that strategies can't. That's why your presence alone shifts things. You don't have to try to be powerful. You are powerful because of whose breath fills your lungs. It's time you stop minimizing your brilliance. Stop apologizing for your clarity. Stop watering down what heaven intensified. You didn't ask for this light, but now that it's yours, it's time to steward it boldly. The world may not understand it, but the Spirit affirms it. And what the Spirit affirms, no counterfeit can cancel. You were written in the language of fire, raised in silence, released by purpose. You don't need permission to move forward. You already carry divine patents on your soul. And what you speak, write, build, and create carries that invisible stamp, heaven's property. You were not called to echo. You were called to declare. Time is the great revealer. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It simply reveals what was built to last and what was built to be seen. And chosen one. Everything about you, every part of your process, your pain, your pressing was designed not for the moment, but for the legacy. Not for hype, but for holy endurance. That's why you still remain. That's why others who tried to imitate your path eventually disappeared. Not because you tried harder, but because you were rooted deeper. You didn't skip steps. You didn't compromise the process. You didn't trade your wilderness for applause. You stayed the course. It would have been easier to take shortcuts, to bend your standards, to chase what looked successful. But something in you wouldn't allow it. The Spirit in you refused to settle. You were gripped by a calling too weighty to be packaged for convenience. And now, what others tried to fake has faded, but your fire still burns. Many started loud but lacked oil. They shouted but didn't survive. Because shouting is easy when the crowd is present. But what do you do when the crowd is gone? When the lights are off? When there's no audience but the Almighty? That's when true substance is revealed. That's where your authenticity was birthed. They laughed at your pace, mocked your patience, but time is now exposing the difference. You weren't behind. You were being built. And what God builds in silence, no storm can shake. That's why your foundation is still holding. That's why your voice is still ringing long after the trends have faded. Proverbs 10:25 says, "When the storm has swept by, the wicked are gone, but the righteous stand firm forever." You've weathered storms, not just natural ones, but spiritual hurricanes sent to unseat you. winds of doubt, waves of betrayal, tempests of discouragement. But you stood, shaken, yes, but not destroyed. There were days you questioned everything, days your faith felt frail, days you showed up in obedience even when your heart felt empty. And yet, you endured, not because you were stronger, but because grace held you. The grace that doesn't just rescue, but roots. The grace that doesn't just deliver, but develops. Now your fruit is not loud, but it lasts. Your fire is not for show, but for sanctification. And the more time passes, the clearer the difference becomes. You weren't a phase. You weren't a moment. You were a movement God preserved for the long haul. You are the evidence that obedience outlasts imitation, that depth outlived display, that what is born of spirit cannot be outshined by what is born of strategy. Others may have started with more noise, more numbers, more notice, but your flame is still here, steady and sure. Because you didn't build your name, you bowed your knee. You didn't seek a platform, you surrendered in private. And now, what was once overlooked is being recognized, but not by man alone, by heaven itself. This is the hour where longevity speaks, where roots begin to bear undeniable fruit, not rushed, but righteous, not fast, but faithful. And in a world chasing rapid recognition, you are the reminder that God still honors those who walk slow but steady. They'll say, you came out of nowhere. But heaven knows the years you were in the cave, the times you cried behind closed doors, the fasting when no one knew, the prayers that no one heard, the sacrifices that cost you everything. Time remembers. And while others burned out chasing stages, you stayed grounded. That's why the glory rests on you now. Not for performance, but for purpose. Not for applause, but for impact. And the impact is lasting, because it came from a place of death to self. There's no gimmick here, no formula, just faith, just fire, just the real thing. You don't need to prove you're different. Time is doing that for you. Every month that passes, every trend that fades, every voice that falls silent, while yours still carries weight, that's proof. And this is only the beginning. Because longevity isn't just about surviving, it's about multiplying, about outlasting and outpouring. You're stepping into a season where what you carry will begin to reproduce in others. Discipleship will come, mentorship will find you, legacy will begin to flow, not because you forced it, but because you endured. Your survival is a seed, your faithfulness is fertilizer, and now the harvest is showing. Not a harvest of numbers alone, but of transformation, of changed lives, of deepened hearts, of sharpened spirits. That's what God kept you alive for. So don't look back. Don't grieve the spaces that didn't recognize you. Don't mourn the platforms that passed you by. If they didn't see it then, they weren't meant to sustain it now. Your roots are too deep for shallow soil. Let them fade. Let the copies return to dust. You were built to remain. Chosen one. You didn't come this far just to inspire. You were sent to ignite. And now, heaven is confirming publicly what you've carried privately for years. The mantle is not just resting on you, it's radiating from you. The oil is not subtle anymore. It's starting to spill. And the world will have to reckon with the fact that God has raised you for such a time as this. You were never meant to be a quiet echo in the background. You were born to be a voice, a sound that breaks cycles, shifts atmospheres, and wakes up the weary. There's authority in your presence now, not because you sought it, but because you surrendered for it. And what you carry is not temporary, it's eternal. They've tried to label you, contain you, copy you, but what they didn't understand is this: you weren't made to be liked. You were made to be light. You weren't created to follow trends. You were born to set divine timing into motion. And right now, heaven is highlighting you. There's a spiritual alarm going off, and your obedience has been the trigger. Every time you chose integrity when it would have been easier to compromise, you were echoing heaven's frequency. Every time you walked away from what looked good but wasn't God, you were proving your roots run deep. And now, fruit is bursting forth, not because you forced it, but because you flowed. Psalm 92, 12-13 declares, "The righteous will flourish like a palm tree, planted in the house of the Lord. They will flourish in the courts of our God." That's what's happening to you, flourishing. Not flashy growth, but fruitful growth. Growth with evidence. Growth that lasts. This flourishing doesn't come from favor alone. It comes from fire, from trials, from tests that stretched your obedience to the limit. And through it all, you never cursed God. You didn't walk away. You didn't throw in the towel. Even when you were silent, heaven heard your yes. You've learned to live without applause, to function without validation, to pray when no one responded, and to worship when no one joined in. You've labored in secret, and now God is sending strength in public, not to elevate you but to execute through you. Because this season isn't about arrival, it's about assignment. You are being deployed. Heaven is commissioning you. You're not stepping into fame, you're stepping into function. And every previous season has been preparation for the level of glory you're about to steward. This is the shift where people will try to reconnect with a version of you that no longer exists. They'll try to engage with old patterns, expecting the same responses. But you've been transformed. The fire changed your fingerprints. The wilderness gave your voice new weight. And you no longer operate at the level of compromise you've been called to command atmospheres. Your feet have been assigned to territory that hasn't even been touched yet. And as you walk forward, be reminded that the oil follows your footsteps. You are heaven's advance team sent not to repeat what's been done, but to birth what's never been seen. It's why your warfare was so intense, why your isolation lasted longer than others. Because God wasn't just healing you, He was shaping you into an instrument. And now, that instrument is about to be played for the world to hear. What you say in this season will carry impact beyond your reach. Your words will feel familiar to people you've never met. Your obedience will ripple through lives you'll never touch in person. That's the power of prophetic presence. You become a living conduit, heaven speaking, moving, breathing through you. Let this be the section where everything you once cried for becomes visible, not for validation, but for victory. You've been carrying this alone for long enough. The breaking made room for the birthing, and now the birthing is leading to building. You're going to build communities, movements, kingdom things, not through effort, but through anointing. You won't have to market yourself. What's real will always find its way. And people will be drawn not to your personality, but to the purity of what you carry. Your yes has made you magnetic not to fame, but to favor. And in this moment, it's important to stay surrounded by the right voices, by prophetic clarity, not public confusion. That's why this message found you. And if it's been confirmation, fuel, or fire to your soul, stay connected, like it, Share it. Let others drink from the same stream that's been reviving your spirit. Let it ripple beyond your screen. If something in your spirit resonated deeply, type "I am ready." Let that be your digital decree. Not just a comment, but a commitment. A short sentence that says, "No more hiding. No more delaying. I am ready to walk fully into what heaven put on me." And if you've been blessed through this word, nourished, sharpened, or confirmed, consider sowing into this well. Support isn't about obligation. It's about honoring the oil. It's about helping this word go further, reach deeper, and awaken more chosen ones like you around the world. Every seed helps carry this fire further. Every share spreads the light. Every subscription ties you to the sound, not just as a viewer, but as a vessel, helping heaven echo through earth. You weren't scrolling by accident. This moment was predestined, and now that your spirit is aligned, stay where the oil is flowing. Don't drift. Don't disengage. This is the season of being rooted, not restless. You're not another face in the algorithm. You're a marked one, a voice that darkness fears, a name heaven knows, a soul that carries weight. So stand tall, stay lit, keep pouring, because what you're about to walk into requires everything God has been pouring into you. Glory cannot be stolen, not the kind you carry, not the kind heaven places on a life that's been through the fire and came out forged, not forgotten. You didn't ask for this glory, you were shaped for it, sculpted in silence, refined through rejection. And now, the radiance that rests on your life is not borrowed, it's born from your own ashes. You've been walking with something unseen, yet undeniable. A mantle so specific that no amount of imitation can replicate its presence. You carry a signature scent in the spirit, one that the gates of hell recognize, one that heaven responds to. It's not charisma, it's not a vibe, it's glory. They've tried to reverse engineer your shine, but what they don't understand is your shine came from shadows, from secret places of surrender, from nights when your tears watered seeds of destiny. And now, the fruit is showing, and it's not up for negotiation. There is a depth in your eyes that only comes from seeing things others have not survived. A gravity to your words that only emerges from carrying burdens others have dropped. And though the world may try to glamorize the outcome, they can't endure the origin. You know what it took. The isolation, the obedience, the moments of holy frustration when God was stripping you down so He could fill you up. They can't fake that. They can't duplicate that. Because that kind of transformation leaves fingerprints too sacred to copy. 1 Peter 5:10 reminds us, "And after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace will Himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you." That is your reality now. The suffering was not wasted. The breaking had a purpose. And what's rising from your life now is not just glory, it's legacy. You don't just carry a moment, you carry momentum. A force that doesn't just touch one place, but shifts atmospheres wherever you go. You've walked into rooms and changed the temperature without saying a word. You've entered spaces and made spiritual resistance nervous before you even opened your mouth. Because glory doesn't need announcement. It introduces itself. You weren't meant to be popular. You were meant to be potent. Your impact isn't measured in metrics, it's measured in movement. In how things change after you leave. In the way darkness retreats when you rise. This glory cannot be outsourced. It cannot be passed down without pain. It must be earned in the fire of devotion. And you've stood the tests. You've endured the pressing. You've passed through the floods and the flames. And yet you're still here, glowing, glorious, unmoved. And though they mocked you when you were misunderstood, they'll marvel when the full unveiling happens. When the glory that rested on your life starts resting on what you touch, on the people you reach, on the spaces you build. Because true glory always multiplies. It never stays contained. You didn't build your own platform. God constructed it. You didn't seek the spotlight. God exposed what He developed. And now, as you walk forward, you carry glory that draws people not to you, but to Him. Because the glory that rests on your life is reflective. It redirects praise. It deflects pride. And still, they'll try. They'll attempt to imitate what only surrender can produce. They'll mimic the movements, the sound, the style. But what they miss is the substance, the cost. Because glory cannot be rented. It must be revealed. Your words are coated in oil. Your silence is backed by strength. Your journey is authenticated by endurance. That's what makes the enemy nervous. Not your appearance, but your persistence. You didn't quit. You didn't collapse. You continued when quitting would have been justified. And now the glory is resting, remaining, resounding from your life. This isn't surface-level power. This is foundational fire. The kind that doesn't flicker with applause. The kind that stays lit in the wilderness. That's the glory you carry. Not the type that performs, but the kind that transforms. So don't dilute it. Don't apologize for it. Don't try to explain it to people who've never walked through the same kind of war. Just wear it. With reverence. With authority. With quiet confidence. Because what they see now isn't the full story. It's just the beginning of the unveiling. There's still more glory coming. Still more fire. Still more fruit. Let them copy what's visible. They'll never touch what's eternal. They tried to duplicate what you carry. They studied your movements, copied your words, rehearsed your cadence. But what they could never touch, what they will never replicate, is what heaven crowned you with. Because your distinction is not learned, it's imparted. You were crowned in fire and seated in purpose before time began. They thought it was your personality. They thought it was your timing. They thought it was strategy, alignment, networking. But the truth is, it was God. From the start, it was always God. Writing, weaving, forging every step until the fullness of time arrived. And now, you wear a mantle that does not slip, does not shift, and does not surrender to pressure. You were forged in affliction. The throne you now occupy in the Spirit was not gained through applause. It was gained through agony, through deep groaning in the presence of God, through the pain of misunderstanding, through betrayal, through holy silence. You didn't just survive those seasons, you were seated through them. And now, the crown does not rest lightly. It sits with the weight of wisdom, of witness, of worship. They don't see the moments you almost gave up, the nights your chest tightened under the weight of responsibility, the mornings you woke up feeling the cost of obedience pressing into your soul. And yet, you got up again. You chose trust again. You stood in purpose again. That's why the seat is yours, not because you reached for it, but because you were raised for it. Revelation 3, 21 declares, "To the one who is victorious, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I was victorious and sat down with my Father on his throne. You didn't just win battles, you overcame atmospheres. You didn't just survive disappointment, you rewrote it as destiny. Every time you said yes to God, heaven etched your name deeper into the purpose you now walk in. And as you move forward, let this truth settle deep within. What they tried to replicate has become your divine distinction. It's what sets you apart without effort. What draws those assigned to your voice? Your leadership, your presence. Not because you crafted it, but because God carved it into your identity. You were not made to compete. You were created to command. The throne is not a stage, it's a stewardship. You don't sit in pride. You sit in posture. The posture of one who's been humbled, hollowed out, and handed a responsibility that only you can carry. They won't understand it. Some will resent it. Some will even mock it. But heaven affirms what man rejects. And in this season, that affirmation is louder than any opinion. You were marked not by the metrics of man, but by the measure of God's Spirit. And that measure is overflowing. There's a stillness on your life now, a calm authority, a rootedness that doesn't react, but responds with clarity. Because once you've sat in the fire, you don't flinch at shadows. Once you've been purified by pressure, you don't perform for praise. You stand. You endure. You reign not in arrogance, but in alignment. And the world will begin to notice, not because you try to stand out, but because you simply refuse to bow. You bow only to the King, only to the one who called you. And in that bowing, you rise. In that surrender, you shine. And in that seated position, you become what they tried to imitate. Only now, they'll see it wasn't mimicry that made you, it was majesty. The majesty of walking with God when no one was watching. You're not just moving in purpose, you are purpose in motion. You're not just wearing the crown, you've become the vessel that bears its weight with dignity. No man can uncrown what God has sealed. Let them try to explain it. Let them try to mirror it. But only you were carved for this seat. Only you were crowned for this season. Only you were chosen for this exact moment in divine time. So sit boldly. Speak carefully. Walk gracefully. Because your coronation wasn't an event, it was a process. And now, the ones who once whispered your name with doubt will see the glory without needing a single explanation. You are crowned in fire, seated in purpose, chosen one. If you've reached this point, it's not by accident, it's by alignment. You didn't just hear a message. You encountered a mirror, a reflection of everything heaven has whispered to your spirit in secret. You are called. You are marked. You are not like the rest. This was never about hype. It was about holy awakening. And if something in your soul has been stirred, it's because the time is now. Not later. Not next year. Now. Your crown is not pending, it's present. And your seat is not empty, it's ready. So don't let this moment pass quietly. Let it echo. Let it deepen. Let it confirm everything you've sensed, but couldn't quite articulate. You don't need to perform anymore. You don't need to chase what God has already assigned. You simply need to walk in it with boldness, with reverence, with fire. Let this be the moment you draw a line in the Spirit and declare, I will not shrink. I will not settle. I will not sabotage my own calling. Every test, every tear, every delay, it was proof that you were being prepared for something greater. And now that you're standing on the edge of it, heaven is watching how you respond. So if this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, type just 3 words below. I'm still here. Because those words carry weight. They carry testimony. They carry fire. Not everyone made it to this moment, but you did. And that chosen one changes everything.